Hello, everyone. Welcome to our side event, Just Energy Transition. I'm a moderator today. I'm Qi Mingpeng, the Secretary General of the TCP, Taiwan Climate Partnership. Taiwan Climate Partnership is from the 8 leading company from Taiwan, AUO, Delta, TSMC, lots of the ICT industry. We work together. We know the problem of the climate change issue. And in the last 3 years, we linked our supply chain. So right now we have 100 members right now. And today we focus on just energy transition. We know we want to solve the climate change problem. We need energy transition. However, just energy transition is more important also than the energy transition. So we have 2 speakers. One is the key guy of the offshore wind farm development in Taiwan, and not also in Taiwan, in Asia. And I remember Lucas Lin, and he told us he wants to be the Asia leader, the renewable energy, not only in Taiwan straight. And so very successful. He will be the first speaker. And the second speaker is our good friend, also our organizer for ICD, from the ICD, Dr. Axel Mikhalova. And he's a research director at the PCR, Perspective Climate Group. And so we work together for a long time, and we hope we can keep going for such kind of event in the future. So, in the first, I would like to invite Lucas Lin, Lin Yongyao, from the Scenery SRE, chairman of the Scenery Renewable Energy, to be our speaker. Lucas, the floor is yours, please.
Okay. Thanks, Dr. Chen. Thanks for your introduction. And like you mentioned, is in the past 17 years, I was in the wind-related industry from material supplier. And then 11 years ago, I started to build the first wind farm in Taiwan. So I think from the screen, you can see actually this is the first offshore wind farm in Taiwan. And you can see the background is blue, but actually, okay, we targeted to have, we are in the COP28 blue zone. So, okay, definitely let's reflect to this zone. And today's I will base on those wind farms we built in Taiwan and to share with all of you about the energy transition in Taiwan. And as I mentioned, our first wind farm just started roughly 12 years ago. So, okay, I also will share, based on those 12 years experience, we will talk about when we build a wind farm and what is our major concern and what is our cooperation with the stakeholder. And the other thing is after we complete a wind farm, definitely we will also discuss about the social sustainability. So I think that's the topic I'm going to share with all of you today. Sorry, I cannot page down now. Maybe. Okay. Okay, but I think, okay, when we are resolve some IT issues, I will continue to share. The first thing I want to share with you about SRE, to have a very brief introduction about SRE. And like Dr. Peng just mentioned, is SRE is the leading developers. Yeah, thanks. Across Asia. So I think that in my later on my presentation, I will share with you about SRE, and then based on SRE's offshore wind development experience, and to talk about Taiwan offshore wind journey. And the first thing definitely is about energy transition. And after we complete the wind farm, or even during the development or construction stage, what kind of major factor we needed to consider? And then we will link it to environmental sustainability and also about the social sustainability. So about SRE, we are the first Asia offshore wind developers, except mainland China's. We completed the first demonstration wind farm in Taiwan. And for SRE, we provide end-to-end development and operation service. That means, okay, we needed to consider all of those related factors from very beginning stage including site survey and how to communicate with the local stakeholder. I think later on I will have much more to share with you. And of course, we also needed to consider what is the major factor during the construction stage, not only about the technical. Today's I will focus on those environmental protection and social sustainability. And the other thing is, I think we are one of the largest offshore wind developers in Northeast Asia. And currently for SRE, we have around 5.3 gigawatt pipeline. We already complete 15 megawatt project. That means our wind farm could support more than half million household in Taiwan. And then we have another Formosa 4 is under construction. So after we complete this wind farm, that means we could provide more than 1.1 million household electricity consumption in Taiwan. And we also have some projects ongoing in Japan and Korea. And as you can see, those pipeline we have right now is around 5.3 gigawatt. And that means those wind turbines will separate in roughly 500 something square kilometers areas. So you can see definitely if for those projects will be distributed in such kind of a wide area, and there's definitely a lot of issue we needed to consider that will link it to today's topic. What kind of environmental factor we needed to consider? The other thing is what kind of sustainability issue related to social we needed to consider. So the first thing about energy transition, before we start a business, I think, after we build a wind farm, definitely we will fulfill United Nations SDGs related to roughly these 5 goals. But actually later on in the end, you will see actually the impact is much more than these 5 SDGs goals. Okay, later on I will touch it on. And as you can see, for all those wind farms are all based on project finance. So even our first and second project, we volunteers to comply with the Equator Principle and also international finance corporations performance standards. That means, or based on these 2 guidelines that provides developers, contractors, or even our stakeholders a very clear guideline how to judge, how to evaluate, and even how to manage those risks related to environment and also the socials. So I think, so in order to achieve these goals, all of those projects, before we start all of those projects, we needed to have an environmental and social management plan. So to have such kind of plan, the first thing definitely we needed to have the baseline study, okay, to understand what is the current status in our wind farm or in our substation, those construction on lands. I think that's the first thing we needed to do. And then we needed to have some evaluation about what kind of environmental or social impact may happen in the future. So, okay, after you have such kind of a evaluation or such kind of judge, then definitely we needed to have some kind of mitigations measures. And of course, that's mainly during the development and construction stage. And after we complete a wind farm, definitely, because the wind farm will last more than 20, even 25 years. So definitely we will continue to have an intensive monitoring and such kind of monitoring will cooperate with our key stakeholder, means our central government, our local county, local government, and even the local stakeholder, for example, like fishery associations. So here, some more detail about that. We will consider from 3 dimensions. The first one is about environmental aspect. So about the environmental aspect, definitely we will do the evaluation about air quality, noise, or vibration, because we are going to have a very huge or tall foundations well built in the ocean. And of course, we also needed to check the water quality from the surface to the groundwaters. And this one will also link to the other issue I will mention. After we build a wind farm, actually will create a very interesting ecosystem in that area. And the other thing is about the electromagnetic field, because such kind of a big project, we needed to build a relative big onshore substations. So, okay, we also need to consider if such kind of a electromagnetic will influence the our neighborhood. I think that's another thing. And of course, we always consider the biodiversities. I think no matter for the onshore, for the fish, marine mammal, or even for the birds. And about this one later, I will have a very precisely, very clear project example to share with you. And the other thing is about the human being, okay, social aspect. So the first thing we needed to consider the key stakeholders, because the wind farm, like I mentioned, is located in the ocean. So the major impact will be the local township and the local fishermen, I think. And we needed to consider if such kind of huge construction will influence the current citizen. Do we need to request the current citizen to have some kind of an involuntary resettlement? But fortunately, because those project is in ocean, so I think for such kind of thing is it never happens. And the other thing is about our project's activity, because we needed to have a lot of no matter onshore or offshore constructions. So I think of these 3 dimensions we needed to consider. And the first one is about the construction stage. And during the construction stage, be honest, it may have some influence to the ocean, but we needed to do some evaluation firstly, or before we build the wind farm, we needed to evaluate, will that influence the fish? Will that influence the migration bird? So I think that's a major issue we needed to consider. And we also have some kind of commitment. For example, during the bird breeding season, okay, we will stop our construction, such kind of thing. And here, there are 3 very clear example about our mitigations measure. The first one is about the bird flight corridors, because those wind farm, as I mentioned, will separate in a quite wide area. Like Formosa 1, it is in 10 square kilometers. Formosa 2 is roughly 60 something square meters. So for each wind farm, we will keep at least 2 kilometers bird corridors, okay, to make sure those birds, they could fly to their how to say that habitants areas, especially for those wide land. I think that's one thing. And of course, all of those wind turbine, actually for all those wind turbine, for each one, the distance is more than 1 kilometers. But anyway, we still keep a quite wide bird corridors. The other thing is about the bubble curtain, because we needed to install no matter the pin pile foundation or jacket foundations. So, okay, you needed to use a quite big energy to piling those foundations. So in order to protect those marine mammals in the ocean, so we have a bubble curtain to make sure, that's our third point, to make sure of our noise, okay, after 750 meters of the noise will not exceed 160 dBs. I think that's a more kind of like an international standards. And of course, we not only have have a noise mitigation or noise observation, we also invite a lot of local stakeholders to monitoring. Okay, when we are doing the construction, if there is any marine mammal nearby that area. So I think that's about our construction stage. And then after we complete a wind farm, that will link it to environmental sustainability. Like I just shared with you, those wind farms were located in that area for more than at least 20 years. And currently, for those new wind turbines, their life cycle is more than 25 years. So we needed to have some observation or even monitoring about those wind farms. And here is a very clear examples. After we complete the construction for Formosa 1, that's the first offshore wind farm in Taiwan. And we have a very clear observation, and we can see actually already create a new and very rich ecosystem in that area, because in order to have a very good scoring protection, we also put a lot of rock surrounded our foundation area, and it already become kind of an artificial reef. And from this page, you can see this study we divided into 3 layers. So the first one is the surface layer. It rough because the total water depth is around 30 something meters. So you can consider the surface area. Okay, there's a quite shiny because the water is clean. And then after 1 year, those picture is 1 year later after we complete the whole wind farm. So you can see there is some sea growth, some attachment on those rocks, and there is some small fish swim between that area. So I think that's a surface area. And then you can see in the middle area, there is even more and more attachment. And you can see in the groundwater or in the bottom area, you can see from the picture, you can see there is even much more fishermen, much more fish, in that area. So I think our wind farm already create another very rich ecosystems. And this one will also link to our next topic is about social sustainability. Because before we build a wind farm, we may have some concern, okay, will that influence the current fishermen industry? And you can see during the constructions period, we invite those local fishermen, and we even invite the professor from the university to give them some training. Okay, how to distinguish the different kind of dolphin, and then those local fishermen become our marine mammal observers. So there are several meanings. The first thing is they become our MMO. We call us a marine mammal observer. That's first thing, because they have been working or living in that ocean for more than 20, even 30 years. So they are familiar that kind of environment. So they could walk in the ocean for quite a long time, completely have no seasick. I think that's the first thing. The second thing is they have been fishing in that area for years. So when they are working as our MMO, but at the same time, they also could observe what is our construction in that area. They know all those wind farm developers, we really follow our commitment with EIA. So I think that there is a lot of a meaning, and of course they also provide the fishermen an alternative income, because when we are doing the construction, definitely they cannot fish in that, but they actually their income is even better than fishing, to work as our MMO. So I think that's another example about our cooperation with local fishermen. And the other one, there's also kind of a symbiotic relation between the local fishermen. Like I just shared with you, after we build the wind farm, after we have a lot of rock, okay, surrounded by our foundation, then it become a very good artificial reef in that area. So the fishermen or those, they are doing such kind of a tourist fishing, they could invite their guests to fishing, okay, just nearby our wind farm. I think that's another thing. And we also cooperate with the local fishery association. Every years we have a fry release, okay, to support, okay, to have even much more fish there. And the other thing is we also invite the local fishermen to work as our guard vessel. So we not only have a local fisherman to work as our marine mammal observer and also work as our guard vessel. So, and to protect, okay, there's no other fishermen will get into the construction areas, and to make sure we could have a very safe constructions environment. Yeah, I think that's our another cooperation with the local fishermen. And the other thing is also, we also have a very close cooperation with the local community. So on the left-hand side, you can see every years we do the beach cleaning, especially on the World Days. So I think we not only have our company's colleagues to do the beach cleaning, we also invite the local elementary school students to do that, and also the fishermen to do the beach cleaning together. So I think that's a very interesting activity for our colleagues, for local counties, and also for the fishermen. They know, okay, we are not only to be here to build a wind farm, we also care their environment. I think that's another example. And the other interesting example is SRE, we have an open air cinema in the Dongfeng harbors. Yeah, so at very beginning, we just want to have this event probably 1 year, but because the response is very good. So actually until now, it already continued for more than 4 years. And every year when we are going to have this open air cinema, and it become a very big event, even the local county government will have some other event and to work with our event together. And that area also become a night market. So actually this event start from the afternoon, and we even have a night market and also the local county government's event, and all together. I think this is a very good cooperation, and that's a soft event. It's not like to, okay, just have some compensation to the local citizen. No, we and then about our movie, okay, we will have some kind of education in our movie. So I think that this is very meaningful activities with the locals government and also with the local stakeholders. And I think the other one is about education. For SRE, we have the first picture book to introduce what is offshore wind power in the world. I think this one is very important. Yeah, after we have this picture book, and then we donated it to more than 250 public libraries. And we also have SRE colleagues go to the elementary school to teach those children, okay, what is offshore winds, and to give them a very clear or correct idea about their offshore wind energy. about the renewable energies. I think that's the first things. And after that, we even enlarge our target from elementary school to junior high school or senior high school, and even to have such kind of sharing in the universities. I think there is a lot of meaning. Okay, not only to share the offshore wind knowledge, but at the same time, for SRE, we also needed to have a lot of young talent to join our teams. So I think after this picture book, we do have a lot of mean force or a lot of activity from elementary school or junior or senior high school. And then we have our colleagues go back to share in the university. And the other thing is we even cooperate with the Taiwan National Library, okay, to have such kind of frequent event, okay, to share what is the offshore wind farm and to have the education. And actually, last month we even have an even bigger event in Taipei, invite several hundreds teachers and students to participate in that event, okay, to teach them what is the offshore wind farm and to tell them why the renewable energy is so important to our lives. So I think that after we have 12 years experience in Taiwan, like I just mentioned at very beginning, okay, we think that's the only link to offer some kind of affordable energies to the people. But after that, you can see it's not only linked to have affordable energy, it also linked to provide some kind of good quality or right education to students. And of course, it also become kind of a industry innovation. And even we needed to reinforce our infrastructures. Yeah, and of course, it's also kind of very important client actions, especially in Taiwan, to build offshore wind farm. And of course, when we build a wind farm, or even during the operation period, we don't influence those life below waters. I think that's my sharings. You can see, okay, after you complete your wind farms, it's not only to provide renewable energies, it also have a tremendous or very comprehensive impact to the whole world. Yeah, so I think that's mainly my sharing today's. Yeah, thanks for your listening. Thank you.
Lucas, yeah, very wonderful talk. I think you have mentioned the energy transition, and you have environmental and social and lots of activity, so we can add a just. That's the point of view from the renewable energy developers. Okay, right now, later on, we have a panel discussion. Right now, I will give the floor to Axel Mikolova, please. Okay, change slide. Yeah, please. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm really happy to be with you and to talk about Just Energy Transition Partnership and the role of international carbon markets. I, of course, congratulate SRE to great success, 5 gigawatt. That's very impressive. And I think that Vietnam, and I will mention Vietnam and its Just Energy Transition Partnership, would be a fruitful area for further expansion of SRE, because Vietnam is strongly engaging in understanding their potential for offshore wind power. Vietnam has had massive success with solar power expansion between 2019 and 2022. So I would think that there is an ample potential. So I first will give a bit of a background on Just Energy Transition Partnerships. Then I will look into the role of carbon markets in Just Energy Transition Partnerships. And I will look into a case study how one could generate carbon credits through crediting of coal phase-out activity policies, and then conclude. So Just Energy Transition Partnerships are a relatively new concept. The concept actually has come out of the discussions how to structure international climate finance for large-scale changes in energy systems. And there was the question how the international funders, especially European Union, but also other countries, could collaborate to really have this upscaled approach. And so within the last 2.5 years, the concept has developed from rough idea to actually already significant progress. And there is a group now of various countries. You see the list here, ranging from Canada across EU, and then but also United States and Japan and Norway as non-EU members that have been collaborating to bring really multi-billion financing packages to large emerging economies. And the front runner of this exercise was South Africa, which in the COP26 in Glasgow was able to agree on the first Just Energy Transition Partnership with a volume of $8.5 billion, aiming at a mitigation outcome of over 1 billion tons over the next 20 years. Then 1 year later, at the COP in Sharm el-Sheikh, Indonesia and Vietnam joined to be partners in the Just Energy Transition. So for Indonesia, a volume of $20 billion to achieve net zero in the power sector by 2050, and with a clear focus on the early retirement of coal-fired power plants. You know that Indonesia has been building coal power plants until very recently. Actually, there is still a pipeline of new projects, whereas South Africa is different in a sense that South Africa has a very old fleet of coal power plants. So for South Africa, it's a bit easier to go in the transition. Vietnam, the next in parallel with Indonesia, $15.5 billion pledged, and there are very concrete targets. So to bring forward to the peak of the emission of all greenhouse gases 5 years from 2035 to 2030, and then ensure that the renewable energy share of electricity would, instead of 32%, reach 47% by 2030. And then the first African country to come into this concept of Just Energy Transition Partnership is Senegal. That was earlier this year. Of course, there the volume of financing is a bit lower because Senegal is not as large in terms of population, also economy, as Vietnam, Indonesia, and South Africa. So $2.7 billion and aiming to achieve 40% of renewable electricity share by 2030. And we have a number of countries that are under discussion for further Just Energy Transition Partnerships. So India, Philippines, Pakistan, Serbia, and Rwanda. Actually, I would hope that we'll see some announcement of Just Energy Transition Partnerships here at COP in Dubai. So that's the overall background. And now, of course, there has been a lot of very positive messages on these Just Energy Transition Partnerships when they were set up. But of course, you always know there are honeymoon periods and then the reality of life sets in. And these challenges have been actually now seen to emerge. One important challenge is that you've seen the big numbers of funding, but this is mostly commercial or concessional loans. Only a very small share of this funding would be grants. In South Africa, it's 2%. In Indonesia, it's a little bit more, I think 3 to 4, and Vietnam again around 3%. And of course, if the lion's share of this funding is loans, you all know that in the current environment of rapidly rising interest rates, countries are a bit reluctant to increase their loan portfolio so much. I have personally been involved now in JETP work in Vietnam, and Vietnam is a country that is very fearful of not exceeding a certain threshold of foreign debt. And this threshold could be reached fairly quickly. And so we now have, of course, the nice declaration about the overall financial package, about the overall aims, but there is this elephant in the room of the debt threshold. And yeah, in Vietnam, it has played a huge role and, for example, then generated uneasiness with the Ministry of Finance, because Ministry of Finance, of course, is the guardian of this debt threshold. And overall, one can see in all these countries an upcoming conflict between the Ministry of Environment, which of course is very happy to have strong commitments and strong engagement in climate policy, but then the Ministries of Energy or Ministry of Industry, depending on where we are, they are not that much interested, because they say, well, we have been investing in coal for many years. Why should we now stop it? It is a proven technology. It's working in our country. And in Vietnam, for example, I mentioned this very rapid upscaling of solar power in just 3 years. They constructed 20 gigawatts of solar power, but this has now led to grid instability. And the population is not happy about blackouts coming into the grid. So the Ministry of Industry and Trade in Vietnam now is very reluctant to agree to further expansion of intermittent renewable energy. So this, of course, is difficult to overcome. And of course, the Ministry of Industry of Vietnam would now like to see grid strengthening to enable very good interaction between the different areas that have power plants. But of course, there is not many actors that actually have appetite to fund this grid expansion because, yeah, making a business case for grid expansion is difficult in an electricity regulatory system where you don't have, let's say, freewheeling of power. So that's why, in my view, the international carbon markets could be a catalyst to overcome some of these challenges, because carbon credits can leverage both the private and concessional capital. And of course, the revenue from the sale of carbon credits, they don't add to the debt burden. They are real revenues without any strings attached to them. So I would think that carbon market can be a very good catalyst for just energy transition. So now that, of course, brings me to the nitty-gritties of carbon markets. You know, for carbon market work, one needs baseline and monitoring methodologies. We've seen recently a lot of criticism of especially the voluntary carbon markets for not being conservative with regard to the baseline determination and the additionality determination. So there is now a number of ongoing attempts to develop baseline and monitoring methodology for phase out of coal power. So you see here the list of the entities that are involved in these exercises. We have the Asian Development Bank, which of course is very relevant in the Southeast Asian region, where we have Vietnamese and Indonesian JETP. We have the Gold Standard Foundation. Gold Standard is one of the larger players in the voluntary carbon market. And Gold Standard has been famous for having a high integrity approach to voluntary carbon market. So the recent criticism that went against mainly the largest player in the voluntary carbon market, the so-called Verra standard from the US, but Gold Standard had not really been criticized that much. Then we have an initiative which is called GEAP, Global Energy Access Partnership Program, and it has the Rockefeller Foundation, then a large private carbon market developer called South Pole, Rocky Mountain Institute, and the Climate Policy Initiative. And then we have the US Energy Transition Accelerator. Those of you who were in Sharm el-Sheikh remember that John Kerry announced this initiative to accelerate energy transition. But unfortunately, we've not heard a lot of this initiative lately. Actually, I was looking forward to a big side event scheduled for yesterday, but that was cancelled at short notice. So nobody knows what they are doing. So it's a bit of a challenge. And there have been interesting discussions because you know that carbon markets so far, of course, are looking at project by project activities. And there has been over the past couple of years a tendency to also look whether one could develop an approach where you credit entire policy instruments. So, for example, if now a country introduces a carbon tax and the carbon tax leads to coal power plants becoming unattractive and the renewable power plants becoming more attractive, then you have a policy approach and you could then try to allocate carbon credits for that policy. The problem, of course, is that in most of those countries, the coal power plants are run by state-owned enterprises, and that means they don't behave as they would have to behave in a fully liberalized power market. So that means the coal power plants will even run if it's economically unattractive, and then the government will cover the loss of the coal power, which of course makes it more difficult for renewable energy than to compete. So if one looks now at the currently publicly available coal power plant phase-out methodologies, the gold standard is the front runner. They released their methodology already in March this year. So they want to look at a pair of coal power plant retirement and renewable electricity generation plant. So the eligibility criterion for that methodology is that the coal power plant is economically viable, so it's not overly subsidized, and that there would be the need for compensation for the retirement of the coal power plant. Interestingly, the gold standard says the renewable electricity generation plant doesn't have to show additionality. So it can be already commercially attractive. I have some doubts whether this makes sense, but yeah, that's at least what the gold standard says. And then the baseline is adjusted downwards compared to the actual emissions intensity of the coal power plant to reflect the best efficiency coal power plant financially viable and commercially available in the region. What this methodology does not address at all is grid strengthening. So they just look at the two power plants. Then we have this GEAP. They have issued a consultation draft in June. So there I also have a pair of the coal power and the renewable electricity plant. The important thing is that they are more specific with regard to the characteristics of the market. So they say the coal power plant needs to be in a regulated market. If it's not in a regulated market, but serves as a merchant power plant, then it would have to have long-term power purchase agreements with the renewable plant to prevent leakage effects. And again, the coal power plant needs to be economically viable, so the same condition as under the gold standard. And their baseline adjustment is done as follows, that they look at the lowest load factor of any coal power plant serving the grid to prevent that you now have an increase of the utilization rate of the load factor of the activity. And also they want to apply the default efficiency based on the technical specifications, so to prevent that there's an artificial tendency to lower the efficiency of the coal power plant. Unfortunately, for the Energy Transition Accelerator, there's no publicly available version of the methodology. I know they've shared the methodology with the International Energy Agency. I've seen the draft informally. I tried to engage with them to discuss the characteristics of their methodology, but they were not interested. What is clear is Windrock, which has been developing that methodology, is specialized actually in forestry. In my view, it's not really well experienced in power plant sector. So their methodology has many features that are more coming from avoided deforestation. So I have serious problems with their methodology, at least with the unofficial version I've informally seen. So what is my conclusion overall? So the JETP concept was seen as a real game changer 1 to 2 years ago. It is now running into a bit of problems. I was happy to see that at least Vietnam was able to publish its resource mobilization plan for the JETP here 2 days ago. Indonesia, one doesn't know whether they'll actually publish their resource mobilization plan here. The conflict still seems to be rather heavy there. We have seen this increased uneasiness regarding the high share of commercial finance and concessional loans. We think that international carbon markets can play an important role to overcome these challenges. What is critical, we have a robust baseline monitoring methodology. In my view, what we would need to see as criteria is that the renewable energy electricity generation plant would have to show that it's not automatically additional under the condition of the host country. I would say that if you combine the renewable electricity with grid strengthening investment, then you could make the case that it's additional almost under all circumstances, because grid strengthening is very expensive. And so my suggestion would be to develop clusters of coal power plants to be retired, renewable electricity generation, and the grid strengthening that is required to actually make this, generating base load electricity. I would think that the most appropriate approach would be through Japan. Japan has been very active in the Southeast Asian region with its so-called joint crediting mechanism. This is perfectly adapted to Article 6.2. And of course, one could also now, once the Article 6.4 mechanism is fully operational, submit the baseline methodology to the 6.4 mechanism. So with that, I would like to thank you, and I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Probably I move back to the Migoloa's presentation. You can check this slide. Very interesting. You mentioned about renewable electricity alone is not additional in most country and circumstance. I'm wondering, what's your opinion about this? Very interesting. They talk about the policy issues about this.
Well, may I comment directly?
Yeah.
I would say offshore wind is additional under most circumstances because technically difficult, and we know from Europe where it has now been developed quite strongly in the past couple of years to overcome the initial barriers to understanding technology in a specific country, like you say. You had first to develop Formosa 1, small scale, then scale up. Now you can do gigawatt scale. You've learned it, but it takes several years. Similarly, in Vietnam, now if they want to develop offshore in large scale, they need to overcome regulatory hurdles and so on. So I would say offshore wind would be additional under the current conditions in Southeast Asia. In Europe, in some contexts, it's already commercially viable, but that's due to 15 years of experience with large scale. Maybe you can complement.
Okay. I think there's several things I really agree with the doctor. The first thing is because renewable energy is rely on the natural resources. That means, okay, like a wind, okay, you will inference the wind is not stable. So I think the second point here is extreme importance. If you are going to have a much more renewable energy, definitely you needed to have a very strong or resilience grids. So I think a grid's strength will definitely come not very important factors to support renewable energy. I think that's the first thing. The second thing I also want to echo Dr. just mentioned is a carbon market will be another catalyst to no matter accelerate or to improve the renewable energies industry, because currently a lot of takers, they will consider what is the electricity price from the conventional thermal power plants. But the problem is for all those conventional thermal power plants, especially in Asia area, our government don't aided those carbon tax upon of that. So actually, right now, those electricity is relatively low. So that also cause some challenge to renewable energy, no matter for solar or for offshore winds. So I think, Dr. just raised a very important methodology or very important policy, okay, for all of those government, they definitely, or for those enterprise, they needed to aid the carbon cost, in their current production cost. I think that's extreme importance.
I have a question to Dr. Mikolova, and you mentioned about the phase out the coal, and for example, ADB. Actually, just I know the G-Fence Asia, they have opening a material in public, want to encourage people. I checked their case. Some cases from Vietnam, Southeast Asia, not too much, because I know some of the coal of power plant is government owned. So how to phase out traditional is government top-down policy about this one. But for the economy view, it's good idea to do. But the problem is the funding from the government. So I'm wondering, you mentioned you lack a lot of the data or information. Would it be better in the future? Because for example, in Taiwan, even I joined a meeting in Taipower, and they also talk about, if one day all of the banks did not loan to us because we still have a coal, how can we do?
Well, I'm just giving example here from yesterday announcements here at this COP. So we've seen even now Colombia as a coal exporting country is joining the Fossil Non-Proliferation Treaty. We are seeing that US, Czechia, and 5 other countries have joined the Powering Past Coal Alliance of the UK. We've seen that Japan finally, after being a laggard on this for many, many years, has decided not to finance any new coal power plants anymore. So I would say it's very clear that coal power will be a pariah fairly quickly. But of course, as said earlier, how do governments find the money to actually then implement the coal power plant retirement? I would say it is easier in situations where the governments are importing the coal, and of course coal import prices have been quite high recently. So in Vietnam, actually you currently have to subsidize the coal power quite generously to make it affordable to the general public. So in my view, in those situations, it's easier to actually get retirement, especially of the relatively old coal power plants, compared to the situation in Indonesia, where there is a strong domestic coal mining industry, and therefore, of course, there's a lot of jobs related to coal mining. There is a whole ecosystem of stakeholders benefiting from coal mining. So in my view, Indonesia will have probably the higher challenges in enabling coal power plant phase out.
Yeah, thank you. I have a question to Lucas, because SRE Formosa 1 and Formosa 2, I take their boat to watch a very huge wind turbine very well. Oh, it's quite amazing. But you know, you are the first one to finish. A little delay, not delay,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
delay too much.
Yeah.
Even in during the COVID, I'm wondering what are your key success factor to make sure your project could be completed on time, and also environmental and the social sustainability, especially about the local stakeholders.
Okay. I think your question will be cover several issues.
Yeah.
The first thing is that to build the offshore wind, definitely there's a lot of challenge, no matter from the technical side or because those wind turbines put in the ocean. So you also needed to conquer a lot of environmental issue. I mean, so okay, the wave height, the extreme wave, or the weather challenge in Taiwan because your wind turbine is located in a strong wind areas. So that means okay, you will also face a very high wave height. So I think that's a technical part, but because today we are talking about the energy transition or just the energy transitions, so I prefer to focus on the environmental issue or the social sustainability part. And I think our key success factor, I will say, to have emphasis to all those stakeholders. That means you needed to put your shoes, your foot in the other side's shoes. Try to understand their situation. I think that's the first things. Although, like I just shared with all of you, although we have Equator principle, we have IFC standards, provide us a very clear guideline how to evaluate, how to judge, how to monitor those social impact, social environmental impact. But that's a very cold or guideline only. The most important is you needed to try to understand those local stakeholders, including the local governments. So I think the mutual understanding is the most important ones. I also could share with you some other example is, okay, actually there is some other project during the construction and they may face some protests from the local stakeholders. But fortunately, why our project could go smoothly because we have a very good communication as I just shared with you. So we have a local fisherman to work with our MMO, help us to fulfill the EIA commitment, to work with our government. So, okay, so during our constructions, they could even provide us a very safe or very good construction areas. Even the other fishermen from the other fishery association, they are coming to fishing in that area. They will have us to prevent them into that zones. So I think to have the mutual understanding, to mutual trust, and then to understand or use their language to communicate with them, that I think that's an extreme importance. Yeah, I think that's the second one. And the other one is because we are the local stakeholders. So I think the other thing I would say, okay, you need, when you build a project, you needed to consider the local element. When I mention local element means you needed to understand local regulation, local culture, or even the local weather condition is different. Although the offshore wind technology is from oil and gas or mainly is from Europe, but your project is located in Taiwan. So you do need to understand, okay, what is the local culture, what is the local regulation. I think such kind of a local element is also extremely important to build a wind farm. Yeah, that's my thinking.
Yeah. Okay. I have a question to Dr. Mikolova because this morning when I talked to Lucas about the price of the electric power, especially offshore wind farm power, how much is it? The traditional power, how much is it? The key issue is the government subsidize for fossil fuel because sometimes the government want to keep the CPI standard more lower. So to push for that, and is this a kind of the just energy transition? How the government should do in the future? should not subsidize or they should subsidize?
Yeah, this is exactly the question we face in Vietnam. So, yeah, how can we square the circle? The government of Vietnam, of course, is still communist. Under communism, one wants to provide basic goods for very low cost or maybe even free of charge. Well, they don't provide it free of charge, as it's partially done in India for the farmers, for example. But in Vietnam, they have a very low tariff for the, let's say, first bracket of electricity consumption, and then they increase the tariff until it becomes self-sustaining for a certain level of high consumption of electricity. So, yeah, under the governance conditions of Vietnam, it's very difficult to convince the people that they should get now a much higher electricity price. So eventually, I think one needs to ensure that one brings down the price of electricity, sorry, the cost of electricity generation to an extent that one can then carefully increase these lower brackets over time. It will certainly politically not be possible to eliminate these subsidies from one day to the next. Yeah, but this is a key challenge in all the countries that are having ZPs because, yeah, they have strong, big numbers of people who have only very limited income, and the political situation would be very difficult. I, as an economist, would always say, if one can try to get rid of blanket energy subsidies and then provide very targeted subsidies to the poor people who then can decide whether they want to buy electricity or bread or anything else, that would be the best policy. But unfortunately, it has been very, very difficult to implement this in practice.
If you change the name Vietnam to Taiwan, I think it's the same. Okay, yeah. I open the question to the public. Anyone have a questions? You have questions? The young generation, you have questions? Please.
Thank you for the excellent presentations. And I'm from Taiwan Youth Climate Coalitions, and I actually currently working as a solar engineer. And I know there's a lot of just energy transitions problems in Taiwan. And I would like to know, when you say the local people, they may have some kind of a protest, and what kind of requests are they talking about, and what kind of problems are they facing? And is the what you call the MMO and other approach can fully fulfill their needs, or is there any other method that can really make them feel, oh, it's comfortable to have this kind of renewable energies in their backyards? Yeah, thank you.
I think that's to me. But the first thing I want to say is, fortunately, in Taiwan, before we build a wind farm, our central government have a very clear regulations. I think that's extreme importance. Or our ruling party, no matter previous one or current ruling party, they also have a very strong support to build the offshore wind farm. So that means for all of those developers, if you follow the regulation to apply the permit, and if you follow the regulation before you start your construction, that means you needed to have a public hearing, you needed to communicate, or you even needed to have a consent letter from the local government, from the fishery associations. Then that means, okay, you already have the law to protect your development. I think that's extreme importance. Yes, there is always have a different opinion. And for example, our first projects, we even have a public vote, and then we got the 95% support to build a wind farm there. I think that's extremely high, but there is always 5% people. They don't like it. So, but on the other hand, they also want to create some noise to request some more compensation or some things. But how can we avoid that? Like I mentioned, is we have a very strong regulation protection. I think that's one, but that's not what we want to do. That's not what we want to do. Like I just shared with all the others, we needed to understand their situations. So I think a transparent is also very important. For example, when we communicate with the local fishery, we not only can communicate with the chairman or vice chairman or some senior directors. All of those fishermen, they organize one committee to communicate with them and in public. So I think that's also very important. Yeah. And so I think transparent is important, and then try to understand and yeah, and honest, I think that's also very important. The other thing is, like I share with you, when we build a wind farm, before we build a wind farm, definitely they do have a lot of concern. But at the same time, for example, when we are going to build a wind farm, we also build the mainmast there. So that means based on that mainmast, we could monitor the current, wave height, or even resources. So then we have a live to show all those data or to share with the fishermen. And for them, okay, they have a very clear evidence before they go outside to fishing. They know, okay, what is the current status? So they gradually they could feel, oh, those developers not only come here to have a construction, they also could share with us some valuable information. So definitely there are a lot of things, but probably that's the major I can share with you about our previous experience. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, anyone? Yeah, anyone have questions? Yeah, actually, the just energy transition is a huge topic.
Oh, definitely.
You know, it's not only for one specific, but in Taiwan we also have 12 items. One is the just transition, but the just transition sometimes is this one. I think what I found it. So I'm wondering, Dr. Mikoloa, and do you have any idea to encourage? Because sometimes it will be people. Sometimes it will be thinking that some people protest, then do something. So what's the best policy way we should do it in advance? For example, you mentioned you have some case, for your JELTP, the minister department, Ministry of Environment is the focal point. Energy say no. They are very conservative. So how to do that from the policy view?
Well, in my view, what one always should try is use catastrophes widely. For example, if you have a really extreme weather event, then policymakers will be more open to change policies. I now have seen over the last 30 years instances where, for example, in France, after a the big heat wave, there was more willingness to engage in increasing carbon tax, for example. So any policymaker who wants to promote climate change mitigation policies should have 3 or 4 projects for policy instruments ready to go in a drawer and get them out once the next climate event has struck. And as bad as it sounds, use the opportunities that the extreme events give the policymakers, and then you can ratchet up the climate policies over time.
Yeah. What about, because some country, for example, right now we use the carbon fee or carbon tax, and the other country, they have the total emission control. And by your thinking, the carbon market will be more active to help the renewable energy develop is totally controlled, not carbon tax, right?
Well, one can have carbon. Well, the baseline credit systems, which I mentioned, they can be linked with any basic policy instrument. They can be linked with an emission trading scheme, or they can be linked with a carbon tax. If carbon tax linkages exists in South Africa and Colombia, there the companies subject to the carbon tax can submit a carbon credit from international, not international, but for the domestic carbon market projects in their country. And of course, similarly, one could do it in Taiwan. So if you hopefully at some point will get a carbon tax, and I've seen over many years that legislative yuan pondering climate change legislation and then EPA pondering implementation regulations. And sometimes I think it's a bit slow, I must confess, but eventually they hopefully will be able to introduce carbon tax or an emission trading scheme. And then, of course, you should allow the crediting against this tax, because that is then the perfect incentive for those entities that are not subject to the tax to generate the emission credits and contribute to climate change mitigation.
Yeah, but I want to look at in Taiwan, lots of people talk about carbon credit, carbon trading. Is this good for your renewable energy development?
I think definitely that will help a lot. Like I just mentioned, is because Taiwan is a small island and our export industry is extreme importance. And in the past, when I talking about the renewable energies, I mean, so like 5 years ago, they will consider renewable energy is extremely expensive. But I think in the past 2 years, the situation is completely different, because like Europe, okay, they just start the C-band from the 1st October. That means, or the other thing is RE100 alliance commitments, because like I just mentioned, is in Taiwan there are 46,000 company, they are doing export business. So that means, okay, if you don't use the renewable energies, it will be either be right of their supply chain. And the other thing is, or you will be aided the carbon tax, like a C-band just announced as well. Then is the C-band certificate is around 110 euros per metric tons. So that means in Taiwan per kilowatt hours, you needed to add it like 1.6 NT dollars per kilowatt hours. So if you consider that kind of cost in their, manufacturing or production costs, they will know, okay, to use the renewable energy, or actually the current offshore wind energies or solar energy is competitive compared with the conventional thermal power plants. So I think, like Dr. just mentioned, is, or your question is definitely carbon tax will definitely to support or to stimulate this industry booming even faster. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Today our topic is just energy transition, and we have a good example. And from the Dr. Mikaloa give us a very whole picture about the policy we should do, what we should care about. And but I think we still such is kind of just energy transition. Maybe COP29, COP30. We still need to talk, right? There are lots of the issue in the future. Okay. Thank you, the both of give the applause.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks you. Nice meeting you here. Yeah.
Oh, really interesting.